Younger than springtime am I, gayer than laughter am I, angel and lover, heaven and earth am I with you. Welcome to the Voice of Reason. Always a joy to be with you on Thursday evenings on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Let's dive in to the Epstein files, the elephant truly in the room, as General Mike Flynn, which you can follow him on X at Gen Flynn, stating at Real Donald Trump, tagging the President of the United States. I hesitated to write this, however, with the utmost respect and deference to you for all you've withstood. Few know it better than what I had to deal with the deep state and can do when they want to turn on a person. The Epstein affair is not about who killed him or if he committed suicide. Personally, I'm glad this known pedophile is dead, but neither is this a hoax. This issue goes beyond all that. There are millions of Americans who overwhelmingly voted for you to be our president, and we want you to be massively successful. No one more than me. Personally, I still have a target on my forehead. I know that, but like you, I still fight. Beyond all that, our country is facing a level of internal subversion, and it is a relentless attack on the very foundation of our constitutional republic. If you're not successful, our country may not survive. It is that extreme of a situation we currently face. Read Lincoln's Lyceum speech of 1838. He knew, as you know, and as we all see from our very eyes, our nation will not die from a foreign foe. Never. If we die, it will be by our own suicide. There is an ongoing undermining by subversion elements inside and outside the United States government. That is the essence of the deep state. All we want at this stage is for a bit of trust to be reestablished between our federal government and the people it is designed to serve. That is all, period. An element that is of great importance surrounding this Epstein affair is the fact that this man was a known pedophile, had a list of clients who represented the upper crust of society, and likely did untoward things to children on his island, in his homes in New York City and New Mexico, maybe elsewhere. He was convicted of it. Regardless of what class of society abuses and commits crimes against children, it is never acceptable. And this is where the argument went off the rails. It's not about what Epstein or the left. It is about committing crimes against children. If he were a part of an intel operation known or run by our CIA, shame on them, and those responsible must be held accountable. If there is another country involved, then shame on them as well. If there are elites inside our country that committed crimes against children, shame on them, and they must be held accountable. Few know how many crystal balls you juggle on a daily basis. I do. And I know you cannot drop any of them. With my strongest recommendation, please gather your team and figure out a way to move past this. The rollout of this was terrible. No way around it. Americans want America to be successful. Therefore, we need you to be successful. Please take this missive as though coming from someone who willingly and voluntarily fought for this country against multiple enemies overseas only to come home to face my greatest enemy right here. You know precisely what I mean. God bless you, and may God continue to protect you from the dark forces that do exist. And I believe you were put on this earth for such a time as this. You truly represent. Signed, Isaiah 6:8, with prayer hands and the American flag, from General Flynn. Perhaps no one has stated it better in the course of the last couple of weeks on this topic specifically. And also, some in the Republican Party, including the grassroots, out of Georgia in the Colquitt County Republican Party, talking deeply on this precise issue, stating that commentator Bill O'Reilly says that President Trump isn't dropping the Epstein files because too many innocent people would get caught in the blast. Now think about this for a moment as they commented on this very issue. If they dump the whole list, it's not going to be some clean, here's everyone who was guilty. It will be everyone who ever shook Epstein's hand, flew on a plane, or took a check for some clarity and charity before they knew who he really was. Innocent people dead in the water, no explanation that would save them once their names hit the headline. Epstein was likely an intelligence asset. This is according to the Colquitt County Republican Party in Georgia. He used to collect blackmail material on politicians, CEOs, scientists, and royals. That's how he got away with it for so long. His job was to get them compromised and on tape so they could be controlled forever. Now, you have an individual who I deeply respect, Mr. Alan Dershowitz, who stated that he's actually seen this list, perhaps one of the only high-profile individuals to say he has actually witnessed them, and that the people who are in office now and who are in power, none of those public figures are currently on those lists. So how do you break down all of this information? We here at the Voice of Reason truly believe that there's been one commentator who has been knocking it out of the park on a daily basis on RSBN's regular live desk, and that's T.S. Dixon. Because of the deep state, because of what General Flynn mentioned, you have to give the benefit of the doubt to the President of the United States, the Attorney General Pam Bondi, also FBI Director Kash Patel, and the Deputy Director Dan Bongino, regardless if there was an argument in the halls of power with Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino. These things happen as you are running a country. But as TS has mentioned on a regular basis on our live desk here at RSBN, you have an intel agency that still has a bureaucracy that needs to go. It's the people under Attorney General Pam Bondi who perhaps lied to her in the entire process. I happen to believe that myself as the cards are falling right now. In fact, as of this recording, just yesterday, James Comey's daughter was still working at the Department of Justice. She has now been terminated, and rightfully so, because this is the deep state League of Shadow globalists who don't care who's duly elected in a constitutional republic. They believe in remaining in power regardless of who you put into power as you put that constitutional governance back into office on November 5th of last year. But we are unafraid here at the Voice of Reason to follow where the breadcrumbs will ultimately lead, regardless of who that brings down in the process. Because as General Flynn stated, our children are the most precious. They are the most sacred. And those crimes here will ultimately destroy this constitutional republic. We're too great of a nation, nearly 250 years young, and have withstood countless attacks from the outside. Now, with all of that said, I find it extremely sad that some commentators, wonderful people, mind you, but this includes people like Megyn Kelly, Ben Shapiro, Liz Wheeler, all talking this week on the idea that somehow Pam Bondi fumbled all of it simply because she gave some self-indulged influencers a packet. I don't think that necessarily disqualifies her from continuing to do the amazing work that she's done on a regular basis. In fact, look at the attorneys general President Trump has had, from Barr to Sessions, now to Pam Bondi. She's by far the best. 10,000 of the 300,000 children who were lost under the Auto Pen administration have been found and been brought back into society. President Trump told us that last week. She's working to crack down on deadly fentanyl. We've had her help secure the border. They've only been in office for nearly 6 months. So the question should be, and the benefit of the doubt, again, given to President Trump, Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, and his deputy, Dan Bongino, regardless of arguments that may or may not have taken place in the halls of power. This is the question. Where the hell was AutoPen with his cognitive decline, with his Biden crime family? Where the hell was Merrick Garland, the Attorney General for 4 years, who sat on the same information? Where was Alejandro Mayorkas, who purposefully, it seems, opened the damn border in order to bring all of this deadly fentanyl and trafficking across our southern border, which led to the deaths of countless children and great Americans? Think about Jocelyn Nungary. Think about people like Laken Riley. They would be here today if that border was closed down, if justice was served to those lawbreakers who continue to break the law over and over and over again, instead of demon rat politicians who attempted to put President Trump into jail over nothing, over alleged mortgage fraud that ended up being lawfare. So today we'll dive into all of this on this show, a very special episode of The Voice of Reason, where we're talking to Senator Tommy Tuberville of the great state of Alabama. He happens to be a candidate for governor as well as Ann Fundner, who has suffered so much from the loss of her dear son from fentanyl poisoning and has been an angel mom and an advocate ever since that terrible day. And in fact, was with President Trump and eloquently spoke on the Halt Fentanyl Act signed into law. Give the President of the United States the benefit of the doubt. Give his team the benefit of the doubt. As he said, Attorney General Pam Bondi should put out the credible information if there is any. At the same time, no one should have to endure and look at countless hours of footage and photos, videos of child rape and abuse. It's wrong. It's evil. Let the professionals do their job and let the breadcrumbs lead that trail where they may lead. But we here at the Voice of Reason stand firm with President Trump and the appointees, his cabinet, that he has placed trust in. Now, we're joined by Senator Tommy Tuberville to discuss the rescission bill, which just passed 51-48 in the Senate in the early morning hours on Thursday. He dives into the procedural votes and a little bit of college football and his take on the upcoming season. Joining us now for the Voice of Reason, Senator Tommy Tuberville of the great state of Alabama. Coach, a pleasure to have you here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Now, this week, the Senate has voted to pass and advance a $9 billion rescission bill that's backed by President Trump, and this legislation would cancel previously approved funding for foreign aid and public broadcasting. But this was a tie-break vote, like we've seen others, with the Vice President of the United States coming in to cast that 51st vote.
Well, it's amazing to me that we had to bring the vice president over to cut $9 billion from a $4 or $5 trillion budget. I mean, that's a half a day's work around here, $9 billion. But, you know, we hadn't balanced a budget in 20 years in this city, hadn't balanced a budget. Yeah, the American people voted for President Trump because of DOGE and all the wasteful spending to try to cut all that out. And this is what the rescission package is about. So we're trying to deliver on his ideas and his campaign promises. But $9 billion, I mean, this should be $90 billion or $190 billion, not just $9 billion. But we got to start somewhere. We had a 50 vote count. We lost 3 Republicans last night, as you said. Vice President had to come in and break the tie, but we need to act. You know, we can spend money in a heartbeat up here. Everybody knows how to spend money. We don't know how to cut money, and we better learn how. $37 trillion in debt. We can't continue to pay $1 trillion a year interest on that debt.
How will that cultural shift happen in Washington, D.C.? Because we've seen over the years that Republicans and Democrats have been somewhat addicted to this debt. Even the late Senator John McCain, when he ran for president in 2008, said that drunken sailors were insulted by Congress because of the way they spend money. It's out of control. Do you think it's simply the environment of being within the Beltway? And do you think that other rescission packages will hit the floor of the United States Senate and the Congress as a whole in result of pushing President Trump's agenda forward?
Yeah, I'm very hopeful we'll have a lot more rescission packages, and hopefully we have another big, beautiful bill in the next 6 or 7 months that we can put more cuts into it. We cut some out of the budget in this last reconciliation package, but exactly right. I mean, this place is built on spending money, not saving money. And everybody up here wants to get reelected. How do you get reelected? You promise and deliver on bringing money back to your states. We do the same thing in the state of Alabama, but we've got to come up with some kind of priorities of making sure that our country is intact for years to come by making sure we can balance a budget. We can't continue to spend $2 trillion more a year like we've done for the last 4 years under the Biden administration. We can't do it. And if we do it, you're going to see some $20 loaves of bread. Cars are going to be $200,000-$300,000. The sky's going to be the limit for the inflation that we're going to see if we don't get control of our budget.
And do you prefer to attack the budget and spending with discretionary and mandatory, whether it be in Alabama or Washington, D.C., with these larger bills, as we saw in the one big, beautiful bill now signed into law by President Trump, or by these smaller rescission packages really cutting directly into what might be the item at hand?
Yeah, well, if you got to go back on the one big, beautiful bill, most of that bill, 3/4 of it, is what I call the tax cuts. We made them permanent. President Trump's tax cuts, we had to do that, saved every taxpayer across the country 22% on the bottom line on the federal income taxes. So we had to get that permanent. And then there is going to be a lot of investigation while President Trump is into every agency of what we're spending, why we're spending it, how can we save money, how can we put money back into the budget and do different things with it? We need to spend money here. That's the reason money's sent here, but we need to spend the money that's only sent from the federal, from all the citizens across the country, which is close to $5 trillion. Now, if we can't run this country on $5 trillion, we're not going to make it. We got to find a way to make sure that we do things the right way, spend it the right way, take care of the people that need to be taken care of, and not just overbloat the federal government, which has been done for the last 25, 30 years.
And one of the more frightening additions to what we've learned in the last few years with DOGE, with all these efforts like yourself, really a citizen coming in to serve the constituents and cut back on this spending, is the fact that the Chinese Communist Party, the purchases of American farmland surging from 13,720 acres in 2010 to 383,935 acres in 2021. Alabama is the fourth largest amount of foreign-owned land right here at home for RSBN. We are home here in Auburn, Alabama, and we know that 2.2 million acres across the state owned by the Chinese Communist Party. How can you address this, as you did last week with USDA Chief Brooke Rollins in the Senate, but also as you pursue being governor of Alabama?
Well, first of all, this is all caused by overspending. It's caused by regulation, way too many regulations that are put on our farmers. Our farmers wouldn't have to sell their farmland if they can make a profit. And what has happened over the years, there's been so many regulations. The input costs have gotten so expensive, whether it's a cotton picker or whether it's a tractor, the things that they have to use on a farm. There's no possible way with the prices that they see now that they can make a profit. So at the end of the day, what are you going to do? You're going to keep running up against a wall every year and keep building your debt up, or are you going to say, listen, enough's enough, and we're going to get out of the business and we're going to sell our land. We're going to sell our land to builders, contractors, and make a profit. So we've got to find a way to where the American farmer can make money. And how we're going to do that? It starts with the tariffs that President Trump's put on other countries. Unfortunately, the Democrats want all of our food to come from outside our borders. They don't want farming because they believe in the climate hoax. They believe that we're ruining our climate. It's cost this country $500 billion just in the last 4 or 5 years, the climate nonsense that they've been pushing. But what it's done also, it's almost put our farmers out of business. So I look forward to, as you said, coming back being governor here in a couple of years. But we got to do it right now. We're going to lose. If we don't have decent crops this year with good prices, we're going to lose hundreds of thousands of more farms, and that farmland's going to be sold. And, you can't blame our farmers for wanting to sell it to the highest bidder. I mean, you don't want to say, listen, you can't sell it to this group because they might have some kind of influence from Russia or Iran or China. We want them to get the best price, but we don't want to sell our land to people that want to come in here and do different things with our property, or even buy land around military bases. And that's a national security problem. So there's a lot of implications here. But again, it all starts with the farmer not having that opportunity to make money off the crops that they raise.
And one of your colleagues, Senator Adam Schiff, this week might be guilty of mortgage fraud. This is a launched attack that was used against President Trump falsely by the New York Attorney General in that grand scheme of lawfare that took place prior to the 2024 election. Is there anything the U.S. Senate can do to censure him as a member, as the United States House of Representatives did before he became a senator?
Well, that needs to come from our leadership, and I understand it. They did something in the House when he was in the House and he broke the rules or the law. Same thing in this situation. The reason that the Democrats don't want President Trump, because he believes in a law and order country. The Democrats don't. And it all starts here in D.C. It's the most corrupt place I've ever been involved in. We've got money going out the door, front door, back door, side door, and there's nobody that really wants to stop it but President Trump. And he is bound and determined to put people in jail that do the wrong things. But it's hard to pin people down when there's so many irons in the fire here in D.C. and there's so many things that they can go after. I mean, it is just rampant up here, and the American people have started noticing it. They voted, almost 80 million people voted to put somebody in office that's a businessman that believes in the country, that will try to put people in jail for this. But I'll tell you, it is hard to pin this all down, but I think more and more of it will come out. The problem, again, too, is the national media is not on America's side. They're on the socialist side, they're on the Democrat side, and they're not going to portray people like who you're just talking about with breaking the law. They're going to try to push the narrative that President Trump is somebody that's lying to the American people and he's not doing things to help the American people. But let me tell you, I've seen it all up here, and I've seen the corruption that has been rampant, and thank God President Trump is in the White House.
And Senator Tuberville, we know that you are busy in Washington, D.C. with countless items on your desk. But for some fun, we also know you're one of the most storied coaches in college football history. So putting on the hat of Coach Tuberville for a moment, how about our hometown Auburn Tigers? Can you give a projection on the season and the forecast for 2025 college football as we're in this new era of not only a golden era for America, but also for college football with the new programs?
Yeah, well, I'd love to be able to tell you I know a lot about the program. Really, the program is in good shape, and college athletes are coming to Auburn, they're coming to Alabama, Georgia, they're coming to SEC because it's very important. But at the end of the day, it's hard to pinpoint how good your team's going to be when you don't know who the players are going to be till the last minute. The NIL has, and I've been trying to work with other senators to try to help put the pieces back together of college athletics, because if we don't do it, we're going to lose Title IX. We're going to lose women's sports, Olympic sports, because all the money is going to have to go to men's football and basketball. But I think that Auburn will be better this year. I've seen some of the names that have come across the wire, so to speak, that's going to transfer in and take the pay for play. But again, you just never know at the end of the day. The one thing about college football, it is about continuity. It's about doing things together. It's about learning to play together. And when a lot of the guys only have 1 year instead of 4 or 5 years to play together, it's hard to put together that consistency. But very tough league, the SEC. I think Auburn will be much better and hopefully can get off to a very good start.
And before we part ways, regarding the NIL, whether as a senator or as you pursue the governorship of Alabama, do you see any further legislation to address NIL as it has greatly reformed the league for better and for worse, pending who you talk to?
Yeah, we're trying to get something done from a congressional standpoint. I think you might in the very near future see President Trump step out and do something on his own in an executive order. I've talked with him several times about this. We've visited. I helped him try to set up a commission to help this. I think at the end of the day, we need to. There's several areas that we need to look at. One is a transfer portal. One is the pay for play, which was not meant by the federal judge in California that started this nonsense. It was meant that you come in and you market your name after you have success. So we have to get away from this transfer portal, so to speak, and put some limits on it. Again, I'm for players making money, but I'm also for players getting an education. And the way that we have it structured right now, no education is out there. Players can transfer every year. If you transfer one time, you're very unlikely to get that degree. And so we've got to put some education back into it. Most of that's going to be transfer portal. And the other one is you're not getting money as a pay per play, but when you get here, you can make the money all you want. You have to market yourself. You have to do what you need to do, but you do it by being able to sell your success on the field or on the court. That's what it was meant to be.
Education, the great equalizer that not only shapes extraordinary athletes, but great men. And we know that you exemplified that, Coach, during your time at Auburn and throughout your tenure in college sports. United States Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama, thank you for joining the Voice of Reason and for being on the right side of history. We look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you to Senator Tommy Tuberville, candidate for governor of Alabama, for joining us on the Voice of Reason. So much going on in Washington, D.C., inside and outside of the Beltway, including the Halt Fentanyl Act and the amazing bipartisan work, which sadly is rarely discussed in the legacy media. And Mr. Director, this next interview, it's hard to do at times, but when you have beautiful people inside and out like Ann Fundner, an angel mom who lost her son, Weston, to this fentanyl poisoning, we here at the Voice of Reason cannot ignore it. We have to be part of that advocacy and part of that media apparatus that brings the truth to the American people. Again, wherever those breadcrumbs lead, wherever the facts lead, as John Adams once stated, facts are stubborn things. And we here again at the Voice of Reason and at Right Side Broadcasting Network, committed to bringing you high quality interviews and stories that can help save lives. We are honored to be joined by Ann Fundner, and she reflects upon her moments from 1 year ago, speaking to the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and being at the White House in the East Room for the signing of the Halt Fentanyl Act. And welcome to the Voice of Reason, Ann Fundner. You were with President Trump at the Halt Fentanyl Act signing just yesterday at the White House. Again, inspiring us with your words and your experience in this absolute tragedy that our nation has seen in recent years. please tell us what that experience was like with the president.
Thank you for having me on. There's really no way to describe what it feels like to be able to stand with, the person who loves America and is fighting for all of us. His incredible heart for America has just enveloped everybody's heart in this nation. He's so loved, and he's such an incredible leader. It's undescribable. It's surreal to stand up there, and it's an honor to be able to stand beside President Trump. And for him to hold my son's picture really meant so much to me.
And this has been such a focal point of the administration, is stopping trafficking, whether it's human trafficking or this drug trafficking, that I hope has changed people's perspective on this crisis, because it's not drug abusers that are suffering from this, but rather our best and brightest and our children who are being poisoned in the process because of people who would be so evil to peddle these chemicals into the United States. If you could share why an open border is not a good thing for the country, we deeply appreciate that.
Yeah, it really is. It's non-discriminatory. It targets anybody that somehow gets it into their system, and the people who peddle it are absolutely evil. There was no reason for the open border. I believe that it was political. Try to get as many people into congressional districts, in my opinion. Who knows what else was in it for some of the politicians, the cartels, and multi-billion-dollar corporations operating over here on American soil, tax-free and regulation-free, being allowed to run amok. Having open borders made no sense, so that people could flood over our borders and, use our American taxpayer resources. It's not fair. There's a correct way to come over here, and many people do it. So it made no sense. The only sense you can make out of it, it's not humanitarian, that's for sure, because it's very dangerous to do what they're doing, coming over here through the deserts and, sometimes through cartels, separating families so that they get to the same spot. A lot of them don't make it. There's nothing humanitarian about open borders. So it made no sense. And on top of it all, fentanyl was flooding over the borders. People from over 184, I think, different countries came into the United States, unvetted, unchecked. And that's not how we work. We are a country of law and order. And if you want to come over here, great, then do it the correct way. So nothing made sense other than it had to have been political and the expense of our children who are dead.
And you inspired the entire nation just last year with your speech, almost a year to the day, where you detailed what you went through at the Republican National Convention, and there was not a dry eye in the House. Please reflect on those words, what's happened in a year with your progress to really bring this story and bring education and awareness of stopping this evil from taking place. And please share stories about your son, because we know it's part of the healing process and everything he did in his short life to make the world a better place.
Thank you. Well, I'll start with my son, because this is my son behind me. Weston had a heart of gold. He really had a true love for and compassion for humanity, for his friends, for animals. He just was a very loving kid, a heart of gold. And he had a lot of friends, great GPA. He was interested in a lot of things. If you gave him a puzzle, he'd figure it out in seconds. He was amazing. And he loved to surf. He was an athlete. He was really just an incredible kid, so missed. So many of his friends are just broken. And, we did everything right as parents, Christian schools, private Christian schools, and we went to church a couple times a week, and youth night, and of course on Sunday. And, we really, we ate dinners together. We, family vacations together, spend a lot of time together. I was a volunteer in school. So we were a family that did everything right. I was trying to bring that across at the RNC because I wanted people to know why we needed President Trump back so much. And I wanted to reach the moms and the parents. This could happen to you was my story. And it was never going to happen to me. It was something I watched on the news, but it happened to us. And it was because of what we just talked about, the careless open borders of a failed administration. And we needed to bring President Trump back. And that was my message. It was a moment that I didn't expect to take off the way it did. In my mind, I was going to get on stage and I was going to give my speech and get off stage as fast as possible. But God has a way of making my son's life have a purpose. And what happened at the RNC that night was really bring America to have a conversation with their children and families, and why the importance of reelecting President Trump. And so that was my recount of that.
And the advocacy continues, and it really struck me yesterday covering President Trump in the East Room with your new community of people who are getting this message out to everyone possible within our beautiful country. And you offered the president to have your son's photo, and he said, no, please keep that. But I just thought that was a very touching moment, and an open moment that you clearly seem to have a rapport with the commander-in-chief, the most powerful man in the world, who's taking time to put an end to all of this. I could see the pain in his eyes and almost the righteous anger in his heart as he was, again, being a consoler-in-chief.
Yeah, he really is. I can't say it enough. You can feel when someone is disingenuous, and you can't feel that with him because he is genuine. He certainly loves all of us. He's doing this to protect us, and there's no other way to see it. And when you're in his presence, you know that he genuinely does care about you. I've been in the presence of many politicians, and I can tell you that President Trump's heart is real. He's the people's president.
And how can we move forward, Anne, with the advocacy aspect? How can we help you? How can we help the angel moms and dads out there, the brothers and sisters who have lost the most precious members of their family to this horrible poison, and stop this once and for all?
Well, there's so many different ways to advocate. I always say, talk to your kids about peer pressure, because while I had so many conversations with my son about to never try drugs, he was a very headstrong kid. I never thought he'd fall to peer pressure. But in a brand new school with a brand new group of friends that he wanted to fit in with, under peer pressure, I guess he caved. And, I never thought that he would. But never underestimate the power of peer pressure, because social status is like gold to these kids. And I always tell parents, run scenarios at home. Let's say your friend's offering this to you. What are you going to do? Teach them to say, not my thing. Oh, my mom's picking me up. She tests me for things. Or my mom's picking me up and I have to be, okay when she gets here. Or, just, I don't want to do this. And that also starts a conversation for other kids to be able to say no, if you're the leader in that and you say no. Also, I was there with so many different organizations. Fentanyl Fathers, Greg Swan, he is incredible. He was a big hand in helping to make all those angel parents come together. With Victoria's Voice, American Border Story, I'm part of Lost Voices of Fentanyl, and I'll be launching Forever Weston here soon. And that will target parents to teach their children about peer pressures. So there's a lot of organizations and resources out there for people where we need to, get the education into the schools. Greg Swan is working on that. April Babcock started a support area for people and advocacy for people who have lost children. And Victoria's Voice has been a huge voice in this fight all along. Fentanyl Fathers and Victoria's Voice are launching Angel Army, and that's going to be a huge organization. So there's tons of resources. There's many organizations dedicated to this fight if you want information online. So.
And specifically with the Halt Fentanyl Act that President Trump signed into law, how does this help stop the trafficking of lethal chemicals into our country?
So this makes it a Schedule 1 drug, which it's amazing that it wasn't before, especially when the last administration was talking about legalizing fentanyl, which I can't even grasp and put my head around. Legalizing illicit fentanyl, which is not the same as pharmaceutical. So it's now a Schedule 1 that will help on a federal level prosecute mandatory 10-year sentencing for people who push and peddle this drug to people, and especially resulting in death. But even the sale of it is considered a 10-year penalty minimum. So that is huge. This is a death drug. These people know that they're dealing death. They don't care. They just want a client for a little while. Once you're dead, they'll move on to the next. There's no shortage of people that they are getting addicted to this after one time of trying. It's 50 times more addictive than crack. This HALT Fentanyl Act was huge to stop the trafficking of fentanyl. And let me just say one more thing. President Trump has come in. He has sealed the border. In June, there were 0 border crossings. That's amazing. So different from the last administration. He has imposed tariffs, working with the Treasury Department, really engaging every department. Department of Homeland Security with Kristi Noem, and then you have ICE and Tom Homan as the border czar. You have Pam Bondi, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and the Department of Justice working with FBI Director Kash Patel. And he's really put an all-out war on the fight against fentanyl. And he's done so much in under 6 months with all these things. Closing the de minimis loophole, that was another one. Just this HALT Fentanyl Act is huge. It is huge because it got amazing bipartisan support, and it's just another step in the fight of the scourge of fentanyl. So he is just doing everything possible in under 6 months. He's incredible.
I'm amazed by the quickness that this team of experts has used to go after this evil. Very swift, as to your words, and completely a 180 from the last administration. And we here at the Voice of Reason shocked that some media outlets simply aren't covering what took place yesterday with the HALT Fentanyl Act. A great success this week, and it goes into really every single topic that is in all of media right now, from secure borders to a robust economy to the tariffs, as you mentioned. It's all connected, and this president very aware of this, but also advocating for that awareness as you are. Hearing that story yesterday as well, there's so many of them, but the other lady, her family suffering 2 fentanyl deaths, one being from a sister who took a line of what she thought was a clean batch of cocaine. So it's not only young people, but this is not marijuana from the 70s. This is not cocaine from way back in those party days. It's literally Tylenol that might not be in a specific canister and from your pharmacist or from a Walgreens or a CVS or whatever store it might be, asking a friend, hey, I have a headache, can I have that pill? That might be the deadly solution, so little that can take a life.
And that's exactly what it is. These kids are thinking that they're taking a Percocet in my son's case, which his doctor had talked to him about at one point. As far as, we know that he probably just assumed if I take a quarter of it, my doctor is going to prescribe it to me, even though my mom said no. He knew what it was, quarter of a pill. And it wasn't Percocet at all. These kids are being deceived to death. In the 80s, I believe there was a Tylenol crisis, speaking of Tylenol, where 6 or 7 laced Tylenol pills with cyanide were removed from were in pills that killed 7 people, and they were removed from the shelves overnight. It was not even a question. So here we have fentanyl, more deadly than cyanide per volume, in these fake pills being passed around high schools, on the streets. Even addicts, whatever they're taking, they don't deserve to be poisoned to death. This is a poisoning. Fentanyl is absolutely a poison. And these kids think they're taking one thing and they're getting another. That's a poisoning. In anybody's book, if you ordered a drink at a bar and they gave you, seltzer water and cyanide, you'd be poisoned, and this is no different. So that is a very good point that you make. As far as you had mentioned, the media lights out. It's insulting because it's all over the agenda of illegal immigration. Again, I think that's all political. I don't think these people have a heart for people who are illegal immigrants at all. They're buying them, they're putting them up in hotels, because if everybody were to be deported who's here illegally, they would lose congressional districts and never win another election. And that's why you see the left being so quiet and silent on anything that has to do with helping Americans, because you'd think the number one killer of Americans ages 15 to 48 would get some media attention, more than COVID, more than car accidents, more than cancer, more than heart attacks. Fentanyl is the number one killer, and 14 and under moms and dads out there is the fastest growing demographic. So now that President Trump has come in, we're going to see a steep decline in that. Thank God for President Trump, and thank you for the Democrats and the leftist media having zero involvement in that. But there is no reason for the media darkness, especially because this was a heavily supported bipartisan bill.
Ann Fundner of the Angel Mom Movement, thank you so much for joining us. Your courage is inspiring. We pray for you every day. And at the Voice of Reason, we will keep talking about this. And for all of my colleagues at Right Side Broadcasting Network, know we are with you. We'd love to have you on again. And we are always thinking and holding close to our hearts your son, who has inspired so many. Although his time here on earth was short, his memory is eternal. And all of these families that you have joined with will get that message out there and will save lives as a result. We're so thankful and grateful to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you for bringing awareness.
Thank you to Ann Fundner for her courage, for her advocacy, for remembering Weston, as we do here every day at the Voice of Reason. It's a terrible thing what has happened on our southern border thanks to the Autopen administration. But now we can move forward in a bipartisan fashion to celebrate these victories, to halt fentanyl, and to thank President Trump, Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, and Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino, who are committed to stopping this crisis once and for all. The winners and losers this week might be somewhat of a variety and different from what we have done in the past, but there was a story in local Cobb County, Georgia news. A former Cobb County police officer lost his life on Sunday, saving a family off of the South Carolina coast. He is the winner this week, Chase Childers. He was with his wife and 3 children when a family of 5 was in distress. And that's when this former police officer jumped into the water at Pawleys Island in South Carolina to save them. He gave his life in a final act of courage, drowning after heroically saving a family in distress off of the South Carolina coast on Sunday afternoon. Now, Chase Childers, he is remembered by his wife, 3 children, and countless family members and friends. He was also a fisherman and could build anything, and from what I've read about him, just seems to be the highest class of individual you can find, a true prince of a man. There's been a GoFundMe set up in his honor that was organized by Jordan Wicker, and you can find that on the GoFundMe.com site. Blessings for Natalie and children in memory of Chase. Chase Childers, the winner of the week. God be with you, sir, and may God rest your soul and your memory. Thank you for being such a brave person, serving your country, your community, your family, and ultimately saving lives when duty called. And that's the inspiring thing that we find here on The Voice of Reason. I believe most people are good. It's like the Luke Bryan song that reflects upon that. It's true in this country. It's true around the world. And we saw it not only on the campaign trail, but we see it on an everyday basis here. And we hope to bring you those stories with a little dash of classic Western flair, punchlines, politics, sports, and music. And speaking of the loser of the week, This was a tough one because you have people like Shifty Adam Schiff from California, the senator, who is now likely guilty of mortgage fraud. He claimed to live in Maryland and California full-time. Interesting, because Tish James, the New York Attorney General, she wanted to use that same dialogue, that same line of thinking against President Trump. It was proved to be false. It was proved to be lawfare against a once sitting president who was seeking a second term. And again, you have individuals who are trying to usurp not only the executive office of the President of the United States, but also take away your constitutional rights in voting. That's true and terrible to have that actually happening in America. So he is one loser of the week, an insurrection of mind and thought and of you actually trying to get to the ballot box and cast your ballot. They tried to take President Trump off of the ballots in America, across the country. They failed. But for sports, we now saw the return of Major League Baseball's All-Star Game in Atlanta, Georgia. Years in the making, because remember, the MLB once pulled the game from the Peach State over alleged racist voter laws. AutoPen called it Jim Crow 2.0. Nothing could have been further from the truth. They were claiming that these laws were not giving you access to vote, that it would make you stand in line for an obnoxious period of time. That wasn't true. And Governor Brian Kemp highlighted that this week, that Georgia's voting laws have some of the most accessible ordinances in the entire country. In fact, one of the criticisms that came from the right side of the aisle was the fact that Governor Kemp, along with Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger of Georgia, actually adopted Stacey Abrams' reforms and what she wanted to give ballot access. So for Major League Baseball, I would have to call you the loser of the week, but congratulations to your friends, the great fans of Major League Baseball who go out there and watch it on a daily basis. And I know that you're considering now having that home run rule that you put into the game. That was fun for a moment. Kyle Schwarber knocking him out of the park to win it all for the National League on Tuesday night. But don't you dare even think about instituting that on a regular basis for tie breaks during the regular season. How stupid can you be to destroy America's pastime? Again, Major League Baseball, the losers of the week. Now, this day in history, July 17th, it is 2025. But did you know, in 1955, Disneyland opened in Anaheim, California, marking the beginning of the popular theme park. Did you also know that in 2009, the TAM Airlines Flight 3054 crashed upon landing in Sao Paulo, Brazil, resulting in 199 fatalities? A very sad event. Also, in 1998, the Rome Statute, which established the International Criminal Court, was adopted. This court has the power to prosecute individuals for genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. That's July 17th, this day in history. We thank you for joining the Voice of Reason every Thursday night at 6 o'clock Eastern as we dive into politics, culture, music, with punchlines, a touch of that Western flair, and a somewhat of a relaxed feel. But our goal here is to bring you your government in the Beltway, outside of the Beltway, and stories that can help you on a daily basis to make America the greatest it's ever been in this golden era. I'm Robert McNeily with the Voice of Reason. We'll see you next Thursday night right here on RSBN.